Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. Today, my guests are Dr. Michael and Barbara Grossman, who help couples build perfect relationships. They help couples overcome relationship problems, parent-child issues, and have better intimacy in sex. Dr. Michael is also an anti-aging expert and longevity expert, so we'll be asking him some questions about that. They say they've had three marriages with each other. The first was 10 years of Michael deciding what was best and Barbara cooperating. The second was a 4-year power struggle as Barbara began thinking for herself as she went to psychology graduate school. The third is a delightful joining of two independent personalities with ever increasing joy. After writing multiple books, 20 years of leading marriage classes for thousands of couples, Barbara and Michael have created the best technology to navigate the marriage journey. With that said, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. Would you like to get thicker, fuller, and stronger hair? Then make sure to check out fullyvital.com. The teams come up with fantastic and natural products that help rejuvenate your hair, but also delay and reverse gray hairs. So if you're interested in better hair, go to fullyvital.com and use the code Anti-Aging Hacks for 15% off your order. Are you enjoying the shows on this channel? Then please make sure to hit the subscribe button down below so you can get notified when we release new episodes. Our goal with this show is to help you and give you practical tips that you can use to slow down and reverse your aging so you can live and feel younger and live your best life. With that said, let's get on with the show.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
So let's start off with, I would love to ask you to give us a brief introduction of who you are and how you got into the relationship and anti-aging games.
You gave that little summary of our relationship issues, and I think we all experience that. We fall in love, and it's just so wonderful. Then after a period of time, we naturally reach some difficult places where the man and woman begin to grow apart, and some of them are the growth is inevitable. That the man changes and the woman changes, and you change from feeling that closeness to feeling more distant, and that movement is pretty much inevitable and usually occurs in your late 30s, maybe in your early 40s, maybe in the late 30s. But that movement away from feeling so close and intimate to feeling like, oh, you need some more room, is a natural growth process. It happens when you're 2 years old. You go into the terrible twos and you complain a lot and you say no, and it's very difficult. And then you get back into feeling more part of the family when you're 4 and 6, and then you get to be a teenager and you're more distant again. And then you feel close when you're in your 20s and you're in love, and then you're in your 30s or 40s and you begin to feel distant. So this is not a surprise. And so in our marriage classes, we teach that stop complaining that there's something wrong with your marriage. Nothing wrong. You're just growing, and you need skills to allow the growth to happen without a lot of upsets. Say something.
Right. So when we connect as a partnership, we accentuate our affinities, and so it's a surprise down the road when we find out we're not exactly the same. We don't agree on everything, and certainly a woman's life cycle and having babies pushes her into a chapter of bonding and attachment. And when she emerges out of that young mothering role and wants more independence, that's usually where there's a lot of tension in a relationship. It's so easy to go down a negative path and come to very negative conclusions. And we wish, our message to our culture is to understand what's going on and grow through it and mature yourselves and mature your partnerships, so that you have the full flowering of love and partnership. And it's a tough message because people get really ground down by those differences, because we react, we get critical, we get angry, we do all, behaviors that are not conducive to understanding each other. And so our skills address how to walk through those stages, and how to have a partnership with mutual respect and understanding.
Love that. So yeah, I would love to talk about many of those things. There's multiple questions I have, but first, what I found online is that there's research showing that married couples enjoy 2 more years of life as compared to unmarried folks, which is fascinating. And I'm a big proponent of marriage. And so as we get into some of these questions about maintaining good harmony in marriage, I'd love to ask you, Dr. Michael, about your anti-aging practice. What things or tools, technologies are you using in the practice that help the body slow down aging or even live longer and healthier life before we get into the relationship aspect?
So things that reverse aging, I think one of the critical things is to give people, as you move into your 40s and 50s and 60s, you lose the youthful hormones that you've had. And hormones are foundational to stay youthful. They keep your brain young, your muscles young, your enthusiasm, your libido, sexual functioning. You feel youthful. You can be 60, 70, 80 years old and feel vibrant and youthful, or you can get old. And so bioidentical hormones are very different than synthetics. So I've been doing that for like 20 years, and it's just been just foundational. So that's one big area that I do in my office every day. And now since COVID, I can treat people anywhere in the United States. I don't have to just treat Californians. The next thing I would think about is dramatic improvements in how people are youthful and stay youthful is through growth factors. So we have now platelet-rich plasma, exosomes from umbilical cord of newborn babies that we used to throw out, and we save these very potent growth factors, and stem cells from mostly the umbilical cord of newborn babies. These stem cells and the exosomes and the platelets signal repair. So anytime you have an injury in your body that's damaged, for whatever reason, you just inject it with these growth factors, and people feel like, oh, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. My hips are feeling better. We can use them intravenously, not the platelet-rich plasma, but the others. We can use intravenously, and it goes into the brain or into other internal organs. And for the brain, this is the best way to keep your brain young. So people who feel like their brain isn't functioning as well as it used to for any reason, we can help it with these intravenous growth factors, and it's been dramatically helpful. So then other things that are really helpful to keep a relationship youthful over a lifetime, you need to keep your sexual functioning. And 50% of men over the age of 50 lose sexual functioning. 70% of men over the age of 70 lose sexual functioning, and it keeps going up. We can repair that. And I do every day, I treat men and women with these same growth factors, injecting them. And I also may add acoustic wave treatment, Gaines wave, where you have a vibrational treatment that signals the body, oh, there's some damage here, please repair it. And we get repair of the natural sexual functioning so that people can be sexually active for their whole lives. And it's so important in relationship to have that as a real part of relationships. Now, there's so many other things to do for longevity, and there are many peptides, and we have many other factors that we do. I love to catch things early, so I have in my office technology to look at your heart to see if you have very early heart disease, much earlier than what you see from what the normal cardiologists do. There, you got to have 50% clogging. What I do, I can see 10%. I can see just little bits of clogging. Reverse it through natural means, sometimes prescriptions, but mostly natural. Looking at livers, people overweight, diabetes, they get fatty liver disease, and that can be devastating to your longevity. Easy to fix. We need to know it, and we need to be able to check on it. And I have something called FibroScan that just bounces vibrational waves, and I can measure. So these are like practical things that are just dramatically helpful, that are breakthrough technologies. So I should stop there. We can do the whole thing on.
Totally. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I think we're now getting into an age where a lot of people are getting interested in health span. Many are getting interested in lifespan and living longer and healthier, having sexual function while they live longer. So there's a lot of things that you're doing, which I'm excited about. Now, I wanted to segue on the topic of sex and having, your sexual organs working properly. I think that one of the top complaints that I've heard in online discussions or even reels online is that men are just creatures that want more sex. We just want it, right? And even if the organ is working well, sometimes the wives are not down for sex, and that's just the way the female physiology moves along. Once you have kids, maybe you're giving all of your attention to the baby, and then once you get into perimenopause and menopause, you don't want to have probably sex as much. So I don't want to put words in women's mouths, but Dr. Barbara, what are your thoughts on the women not even wanting sex from men, and how do we get over that hump?
Well, I think bless men's hearts for wanting sex, and what ultimately it's about wanting connection. And what men can learn over time through their partnerships with their wives is having heart-to-heart conversations that are meaningful and connecting. When you connect with a woman will respond with being happy to open up her heart and body to her man. But it goes hand in hand. Connection has many levels to it. And my hunch is that if there's studies, it's because women aren't articulate about what it is that stops them from having sex. I think they want this heart-to-heart feelings, sharing kinds of conversations that have them feel close to their men. They do that with their girlfriends, but eventually after, there's so many responsibilities in married life, but the couple needs to incorporate this emotional feeling, spiritual kind of connection with each other. So, and that will guarantee a lifetime of sex.
Okay, great. The other refrain or something you mentioned earlier is that rela in a relationship, resentment builds up over time. Sometimes it's small acts that other person views as slights, but they start building up, and now there's a whole bank of them. And so, what are some techniques, or what have you seen work where people can get rid of the underlying resentment and start loving their partner with their full heart again?
Well, we teach our couples that resentment is really a form of anger, and anger isn't a primary feeling, believe it or not. It
Hmm.
sits on top of hurt and fear. And women need to be responsible to share the more subtle feelings, the hurt, the disappointment, the fear. And if they allow their upsets to grow, it does become anger, and it becomes impossible to negotiate until the couple learns new skills. They have to take a break. They have to learn how to share and talk. You have to be reflective and not dramatic. And that's a learning curve. We don't learn that in school, and likely we don't learn that in our families. I think we learn that on the job in our relationships, and that's why we teach skills to our couples. How do you talk to each other when you're upset about something? And we have concrete behavioral skills that we drill with our couples so that they protect what they value so much. You said, I don't think any partner really wants to hurt their partner's feelings, but they have no objective reality about how they're coming across when they're angry, and unload about a list of resentments. If you catch it the first time and you understand you're hurt, it's a much different conversation.
Got it. Okay. And lately, there's been conversations that are being had online about communicating your needs up front so your partner knows what you're looking for instead of assuming they'll figure it out on their own. So, in terms of needs communication and letting people know what your needs are, what are some effective ways that couples can kind of let each other know up front that, hey, I want to be touched, or I want to be loved, or here's my love language. I would really appreciate if. What are some techniques that you've seen that work in this aspect?
It's that simple. When it's not a demand, when it's a request. It would really make me happy if you gave me a hug in the morning when you first see me when I get up, or if we have time together tonight, we put some time aside for just the two of us. If you say it nicely from a point of view of request, not demand, that's very effective. A man can hear that.
Hmm. Okay. So, Dr. Michael, question for you. What are some of the top needs that men are looking for from women that they're not communicating or there's missed expectations around that you see most often?
Well, men like to feel respected and they like to be appreciated for what they do. So men tend to be doers. And when they do something for their woman, they want their woman to thank them. They don't want them to be dismissive. They don't want them to be critical. They want to be appreciated for what they do. Very, very, very important. And we teach that in our classes, how women should be thanking their men. And men have to let the women know, oh, I thought it would make you happy when I did such and such. And you want to communicate that. So it's a little bit of a fun game. When you first meet and you're in love and you're courting, this is all automatic. The women just love what the men, oh, thanks so much for taking me out and going here and there. Oh, I had a great time and so on. And the man feels great about it. But then 20 years later, he's doing the same thing and he gets nothing. And he feels like, who wants to do this? This is no fun. Men need to feel respected and appreciated from their women. And women want to feel appreciated and valued for their attractiveness. So men have to let the women know that, oh, you look so beautiful, honey. Oh, if you want me to do this, oh, I'd love to do this for you. And women want to feel attractive to their man, and they want to feel like the men want to pay attention to them. And so there's a lot of communication that we teach the men and women. And men and women are different in a lot of different ways. So we teach about the divided brain. Every animal, from worms to birds to all kinds of animals, all the animals have divided brains, a right and left hemisphere. And women have a lot of connections between the right and left hemisphere. Men don't have a lot. So men and women are different because a man gets stuck in his practical left side of the brain that's very practical, focus on details. And the right side is open to the big picture. But the men frequently live in that left side a lot more. And when they get to the other side of the brain that's into the big picture, the emotional, the creative side, they're gone to that side, whereas women go back and forth. So when women and men have conversations together, it's very difficult because when a man gets into his emotions, he just wants to leave and he needs to take time to process. Women go back and forth all the time and they don't want to take off time to process. They can process right away. We have to teach men and women how to deal with that because you can't expect your partner, man and woman, to be like you. They're not. Men need a lot of time to process. Women process, they go fast back and forth. So we teach men and women in our classes, make appointments for these various things. Give the guy time to understand, all right, we're going to have a conversation. Okay, be ready for it. We'll do it. Or if the man's upset, give him time. So, okay, take your time. We'll talk about it later. Don't think you have to handle it now because otherwise you get the man stuck in his anger and he can't think anymore. He's just angry. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you give him time, then he can come back and be processing it and thinking about it and not just being in the anger part. So men and women are different. You've got to accept that your partner is not the same as you.
Yeah. So a question I have as a follow-on is that with the times changing so much and couples not having a manual on how to navigate this changing society culture, in the past, when women did not work and men were the primary breadwinners, it was easy to be thankful when men brought you something that took them, 3 months of their salary or took a lot of time and effort to build or bring or buy for you. Now women are making as much, sometimes more, and sometimes less, of course. And so do you see that there's less appreciation for men doing the things or buying the things that they would have for women than in the past because now they can buy them themselves? They don't need a man. They don't need him to fix something in the house. They can call the handyman that's an hour away. How is this change impacting the appreciation that men receive from women or have received from women?
You're absolutely right. And we're not a traditional society anymore. Everybody, wants to develop their own individuality, their own selves. And so you have, I think that increases the competition between men and women, even in their relationships. And it's a hard ride if you don't understand that. You can see it in our culture. We have great conflicts in our culture because everybody feels right and self-righteous. Mm-hmm. And there isn't really a agreed upon wise format for true conversation as a culture. And it's a sad time, but it also means we're all growing as individuals. So it's not all bad news, but we have to take responsibility for our individuality and learn how to talk and be responsible for what we think and what we feel and what we want. And like everything else, there's no right or wrong. Each person in a conversation is right. That's hard for people to understand because we kind of dichotomize reality into right and wrong. And we, as a culture and as individual partnerships, we have to learn to hear our partner as being right for themselves, and we have to share ourselves with a certain confidence that we're sharing our own perceptions, our own truth, our own experience. And then from there, we have to negotiate what can work for the body, the partnership, or the society. And yeah, as we're growing as couples in this culture, our society has to grow too. And part of why we want to grow our couples is to introduce or contribute to our society and bring wiser, more mature people to the conversation about what's the best direction for our society. But in a microsphere, as a partnership, you need to have a direction for your partnership. You need to have a direction for your children, for your elderly parents. There's so many important decisions to make in life. And so it's so important to learn how to share what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what you believe is a good direction. And then be willing to hear your partner's version of that. And that's a skill set that is, is a stretch for most people. So they need to be guided.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we teach in our classes is if you're going to be a parent, you have to have a way of communicating with your partner in private to decide what's best for the family. What are the rules for the household? And the parents have to do it in private. And then you come out to the children and you tell the children, oh, these are the rules for the house. This is, and you may not agree on everything, but you sort of compromise, and you've got to have a unified front. This is the rules for the house. And the children can't play one parent off of the other. They have to say, okay, these are the rules. And then when the children get older, you're going to make new rules. And we have a new meeting with the kids and say, okay, these are the new rules. And you have to learn to have your partner be your, has to be a partnership. And you have to agree on these things. Now, the other thing you have to do when it's not involving the kids, you have to work with each other to decide who's going to do what in the relationship. You don't want to divide things up 50-50. So we don't encourage 50-50 partnerships. That means you're two lawyers getting married and you're going to lose the romance. So you have to decide, okay, who's going to take out the garbage? Who's going to clean up the kitchen? Who's going to do the writing the checks? Who's going to do this and that? And then you thank them for doing it. You thank them and say, oh, you're so great. You've done this. I just love and appreciate it. You've got to appreciate what each other's do, and you have to have agreement on it. You can always change it, modify it, but that creates love and passion when you're not doing the same thing as your partner, but rather you're appreciating that they're doing it for the relationship.
Yeah, love that. I wanted to follow up on something I think Dr. Barbara, you'd said earlier about, or Dr. Michael, it's falling in and out of love a little bit, right? In and out. So you're vacillating a little bit through your marriage. And the question I had was, there's obviously a great incidence of divorce in this country and around the world, increasing. And so when we look at America in particular, with the divorce rate, it appears that 70% of the time women tend to file for divorce. That number goes up to 80% if they're educated, if they went to college. And so why is it that if the partners are unhappy, men are not filing for divorce, but women are doing that? And a lot of times it appears that men are just taken aback. They don't even have a clue that divorce is coming. So what have you seen in your practice?
Well, again, women are, they enter their 20s, they have their babies, and they're very supportive of the family. They don't think of themselves as individuals. They're there to support their children and take care of their husbands. And so they're traditional people. And traditional people are like in traditional cultures. It's very supportive of the whole. When the children get to a certain age, they start going to school. Women usually step out and start retraining or developing an individual pathway for a professional success. They start thinking of themselves as individuals. And oftentimes they wake up to how much they resent how much they've been doing and they haven't been getting for what they've been contributing. Because it is a huge role to be a mom and house person. And they don't understand that there's a shift in their development. They don't take responsibility for the fact that they chose to do this. Somehow they think it's their guy that's put them under, some subservience, or they think it's unfair being a woman, and all of that. In truth, they have given service because it does take years to produce a child independent enough to go to school, and there's a lot to do. And so a woman isn't busy developing herself. So when the child gets old enough or the children get old enough, the woman has more freedom to go develop themselves and they reflect on all that they've sacrificed, and you get one heck of a resentful woman. And it's not the men's fault. They probably, it's the dynamics of that part of life. It's also a factor that women haven't been asking for what they want. They've just been serving. And so it does come as a hard surprise for a man to hear that kind of negative feedback. It's so painful. And I would say, I've heard a lot of people say, if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have had to get that divorce. And, we don't have a sophistication in our society to know that there are certain phases in life. We're not the same in every phase. And there are sacrifices that we make for the good of the family. And it's not anyone's fault. And we have to take responsibility to grow what we want. And that's mostly our story. We're older than the population you're probably serving on the show, so we're ahead in the life cycle. We've been there. It's a hard time to go through, and that there was a point in that time, just to respond to your question, where I wasn't nice. I thought Michael was the cause of my restrictions, my being held back, my all that, blame talk, and that nothing could be further the truth. So happy I had a family. I have wonderful children and grandchildren, and it's just the nature of the life cycle. And I took it on myself to catch up with myself and figure out my direction. And so if you understand the phases of life, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And there's skills to learn at every stage.
And the skills are critical. And that's what we teach in our classes. We teach the husband and wife how to talk to each other without arguing, and how to make appointments and set them up. And you do it regularly. You don't do it once a week. You do it every day, or later on, maybe 3 times a week. Barbara and I still do it frequently. And we've been doing it for 40 years? We share our hearts with each other. It's critical to do that. You want your husband and wife to be your best friend. And you see it among women, they share their hearts all the time. Men don't tend to do that so much. They live in their left brain, they're analytical, and they don't need to share their hearts with their best friends. They're very practical when they share. But you learn as a man to share your heart with your spouse. And when you're sharing with your spouse regularly, that is critical to maintaining that connection, that intimate emotional connection. And you have to learn how to do it. You're not born with that skill.
I got you. Okay. So let me ask you about stress and how it contributes to breakups, unfortunately. So again, all of us have stressors in our life. We're going through so much going on, especially if you have kids, you've got a family, you've got maybe 2 jobs, there's so much that needs to be done. There's food to make, there's kids to get ready, and just bosses or your companies or work you got to go to, and the emails never stop because I've been in corporate America. And so the question would be, if stress is such a huge factor in our lives and we don't necessarily have the skills to deal with stress, it leads to not only disease in the body, but it also leads to you snapping and fighting and arguing with your partner. And I've seen couples get in some explosive arguments, and I'm thinking to myself, holy moly, I can't believe you said that. It's going to be very hard to come back from this. And so, what is the role of stress in modern day breakups? And how can couples avoid and kind of circumvent and never fight in an explosive manner?
Well, that's a great topic, and it has many different layers to it. So one layer is the things we've already talked about. You've got to learn how to share with each other, how to make requests, how to appreciate what they're doing for you. That is critical. You don't want the emotional stresses to build up that are the mind stresses, the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling with your partner. And that is something that you have to learn how to do it through our skills courses. Um, uh, the fallinginloveforever.com website has all these different courses that you can take online. Some of them are live courses, and the other ones are practical courses. But you learn the skills. You can't get away from the skills. It's critical to have the ability to learn how to calm down and to feel peaceful. And when life gets real busy, you need to have that. And so I teach meditation online twice a week.
Hmm.
I teach people how to have deep, deep, calm, peaceful meditation. Life is so busy now, we don't have what we had 100 years ago. 100 years ago, you had plenty of time to just relax and talk, to just calm down, take a walk. Now we're all so busy. You need to focus your time of being peaceful so that you can dissolve that stress response. When a lion runs after you, you are only concerned about jumping into that tree as soon as possible so you can survive. So you turn off your immune system, you turn off the blood to the higher parts of your brain, you turn off your digestive system, everything goes into your muscles, and you just want to escape. And nowadays, that stress response will just stay there all the time because of all the busyness going on, and you just never get into that calm, peaceful state. And that affects, and we all know when we get upset about something, our spouse comes and says something to us, or our child says something, and then we start getting angry, and then we feel bad afterwards. Oh, I shouldn't have gotten so angry. But you're all set up that way. When you learn to meditate, you learn to feel calm and peaceful, and that changes the way you interact with everybody, including your spouse. And you need to learn how to feel that peace and that calmness. That's such a critical thing. So the skills to be able to share your emotions are critical. And physiologically, you need to learn how to feel peaceful from meditation.
Hmm. Got it. I've heard folks say that as a man, you have to always maintain your composure, especially as a man, because you're expected to, and you don't have the hormone changes during the day, so that enables you to have a better composure during the day. But I've also heard that when men lose their core, when they're angry, when they're going up and down in emotions, that causes a woman to trust her man less. Is that true? And is it very important for men to never lose composure?
Well, I think a key piece of maturity is learning self-regulation. And Michael talks about meditation, and that's a great practice to do that regularly, because you get familiar with a quiet center inside, and you learn how to process yourself to that quietness. And that's a very good learning experience that you can take with you during your day. Others of us have to learn that with psychological training, the social skills we teach in class or psychotherapy. But it's key to be able to regulate yourself emotionally. If you just take off like a bomber when you have some strong feelings, things are not going to go well. And it might take a person into their 30s and 40s to realize it's not a winning strategy. But it's important to understand that we have to not be our feelings, but be reflective about our feelings and find a way to share them so that whoever we're talking to, starting with our partner, can understand them. And most people are their feelings when they're talking about it. They're so upset, they're possessed by their feelings. That's not self-regulation. And that's a key part of, becoming a mature adult.
Mm-hmm.
And,
So
and,
follow. Sorry,
and I would just add that hormones are a part of feeling peaceful. So when I replace someone's hormones, when men and women are getting older, they need more women, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone to feel good. The mythology of the wicked witch comes out of that. 500 years ago, the only people who lived past 50 or 40 were these occasional people who got older and went through menopause. And they were irritable, cranky old women. And that's where you get the wicked witch from, because that's what old women were. They were irritable, cranky. You can avoid that irritable, cranky stuff, and going through menopause can be very, very smooth if you do the bioidentical hormones. Now, for men, they can get stressed out when they don't have their testosterone, and they get overwhelmed with all the stuff going on, and they can get very emotional, but more of a depressed and somewhat irritable. Menstruating women can have some issues at certain times of the month, and we can smooth it out with natural hormone replacement. So it is a factor, but you also have all the other factors that are psychological factors. You've got to learn the skills that we talked about.
So this also segues into my next question, which was, how do you maintain passion for each other 10 years into a relationship, 20, 30? Your bodies have changed. Maybe you've added a few pounds. You've added some resentment over the years with each other. How do you still maintain that passion? I'm not saying you got to jump each other every night, but want to have sex on a frequent basis.
Well, if you're growing and you're learning about yourself, you're taking responsibility for your feelings and asking for what you want, and you're developing your life because you're connected to yourself and you know what's next for you and what's next after that, and you keep growing, you're not the same person over time. You keep evolving, and so does your partner. So I would say, we have a constantly renewed connection all the time. Michael is fundamentally the same man, but he has evolved over time. He's just grown tremendously. I hope I have too. And so we have a fresh new relationship every day. And so it's not the same old. And bless Michael's heart that, and I'm grateful that I was smart enough to keep up, that we pretty much, stay in our lane and keep growing, and we come together with great enthusiasm.
And
the passion comes automatically when you're doing the sharing exercises that we talk about in our classes. You feel emotionally connected to your partner. And you're taking these natural hormones that we talked about and the peptides. You have libido. It's there. And if your partner is listening to you and you're sharing, and they're your best friend, and when something happens, you can share with them, and you are talking and going over things, you just naturally are attracted to them and they to you.
And can I add that no one's collecting grievances because we resolve them right away. So there's a kind of open, fresh delight in being alive together.
Right. Grievances are one of the things that we teach, like in my meditation book, I talk about forgiveness. If you want to be spiritually evolved, you have to forgive everybody in your life and everything and anything that has happened. That's a big thing to do. It's not going to happen right away, but you need to know you have to do it. That doesn't mean you let people run over you like you're a rug. You make boundaries, but you have to forgive all the things that happen. And it's a spiritual process that you want to go through so that you can be free to be your best creative self. And then you don't carry resentments.
Plus, inside every upset is some information that you need to share about what you really want. And so you keep growing in your self-knowledge and your knowledge of your partner.
Right. And in the beginning of the sharing process with your partner, there may be a lot of anger, oh my goodness, so much anger comes up. But then you start sharing about the hurts, all these hurts, and then you're sharing about your fear. I was afraid of this, losing that, and so on, and then you're sharing the more intimate things, and then you find you don't have any ongoing resentments. They're
Mm.
gone,
Wow.
gone. And every day when you do sharing, you're talking about things you don't want to carry resentments about. And one of the things I teach people in my meditation class is that every time you get upset about something, you cut yourself off from experiencing your higher self, and you start experiencing your animal self, your personality self, and you get mad that this person will cut you off and that person who said that. And you don't want to live in that place because you feel so good when you meditate. You feel bliss and joy and peace. You don't want to have that cut off. And so when you get upset about something, you have to say, okay, how can I look at this better? How can I see it differently? How do I interpret it differently? You do the same thing with your marriage partner, but there you're sharing back and forth with it. And you're saying, oh, when this happened, I about this and this. And then your partner says, oh, I had no idea. Or maybe you should have feel bad because I felt bad. And you talk about things. But ultimately, you get to the place where resentments are something that is not there.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, great answer. I wanted to ask another question in terms of growth and finding passions as you get older. So, let's say that as a woman, you choose to have kids, and that's a responsibility you take on. And you may or may not have a job while you're raising kids, especially if they're young. Let's say you don't, but at some point they start going to school, and now you come back. The man's been working away at his passion or work or business, and now the woman's ready to come back into the workforce or even develop some new passions and kind of restart her new life. How can couples stay connected? Because the challenge I think I see is that the man is he's doing things that are so different than the woman that there's no commonality of things to talk about. So the things you choose, are there passions, vocations that you can choose together and to kind of grow together in, which allow you to be more connected as opposed to completely separate and then just catching up on what's happening in the house?
So you have to, brainstorm about how you want to stay connected. As the children get older, fathers get more involved with their children. In our case, we wove our family activities around interests we have in common. As a family, we played a lot of basketball and softball. Basketball was my sport in college. Michael's a baseball player. And Michael takes the lead on taking, adventures that we did as a family. Our interests have, developed. We find projects to do together. One of our big projects, we've become competitive ballroom dancers. We practice and we compete all over the country,
Wow.
amateur competitors. And, you have to, brainstorm about what your interests and talents are, and see where you can come together. Now, dancing was my fantasy. I don't know that it was in Michael's wheelhouse, but he's an athlete, and he loves competition, so he jumped into it, and he's like the biggest cheerleader for competition, and we've enjoyed that. And dancing is the world of competitive dancing is a community, and so we share that community. We also share a spiritual religious community. We do lots of projects together, even though we have very separate work days and separate practices.
Mhm.
So that you have to be, intentional to figure out how you can connect your interests and common passions so that you are stretching and growing, and it's just fun to take on new projects.
Mhm. Totally, totally. Okay, awesome. Well, these have been really good answers. Thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge and also talking about how you help couples. Where can people find out more about you? Are there any socials, websites? Please tell us where people can like follow up and learn more about you.
Well, for our classes and courses, I would recommend they go to fallinginloveforever.com. And you'll see on there our books that we've written, and you'll see the different courses that are available. Some you can just take at your own time online. Some of them are live classes that we schedule on a regular schedule. And that would be one way to get in touch with us. And anyone who's interested in the reversing aging from the body side to doing all these healthy things to live longer and live more vibrantly, ocwellness.com. It's for Orange County, ocwellness.com. My office is in Orange County next to John Wayne Airport. And yeah, so people can call up. If people want to get a free 15-minute consult, when you call up, you can call my office, which is 949-222-0232. Get a 15-minute consult. I'll talk to you and see if there's something we can do together that would be really worthwhile and helpful. You're welcome to call and talk to me for that 15-minute consult.
We also have a parenting class online where parents get together and they hold authority, they define the rules, they back each other up on the rules. It's very calm. There's no upsets in the household, but the parents are definitely in charge. And it's good for the family harmony. It's also good for children. And parents need to work together to raise their children.
Agreed. Okay, wonderful. Thank you to both of you for coming on the Anti-Aging Hacks show.
Pleasure to be here with you.
We enjoyed it greatly. Thank you.